Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this week's Estidama Board podcast, where we take a deeper dive into this massive push that we're seeing across Saudi Arabia throughout the region towards sustainability, towards tackling climate change, and trying to uncover insights and intelligence that will provide solution and help those stakeholders along their journey ahead. We're joined here today with our special guest speakers, Mark Tester, co-founder and chief scientist at Red Sea Farms, and Dr. Mohammed Al-Surf, Senior Advisor at Sustainability and Climate Action at Jacobs, tackling, of course, our critical question, which is how innovation and climate technology connect to action on water, energy, and food nexus. Thank you very much both for joining the show. Mark, I just wanted to first kick off with you to get your overall opening comments on the topic. Of course, it's a wide challenge, it's a big challenge, but just to get your first thoughts in terms of turning the dial.
Well, we need to get down to net zero. We need a huge number of sectors and segments engaging. And of course, the food sector is one of the most, in fact, arguably the most impactful of human activities in terms of sustainability, or its unsustainability, I should say. And to try to reduce the impact, the environmental impact of the food sector, we need to be changing policy, we need to be changing consumer behavior, reducing waste, but we also need to be having significant contributions from innovation. And there's heaps of innovations that are in the pipeline and still probably that none of us on this particular discussion know about, coming through and feeding in through a system which I think is very, very, as you said in your introduction, very eager for innovation and desperately wanting to change. Innovations are in both, I would categorize them very broadly, in the IT space and a range of different information technologies, so robotics, information of things, Internet of Things, I should say. That was a good Freudian slip. And many innovations in IT can make huge and actually very rapid contributions. And complementing that and interweaving with that are innovations in what you could loosely call biotechnology, I guess. And that can embrace also areas in between, like engineering, material science. We sort of, nanoparticles were very fashionable a few years ago, but there's still big innovations and big contributions from nanotechnology as well, which can have huge environmental impact.
I just wanted to follow up to that point on innovation. Of course, there's one aspect of creating those solutions, but then, of course, implementation and scaling up is the next part of it. Red Sea Farms has made massive strides. What, from your perspective, is your best advice to stakeholders in terms of implementing those innovations and, of course, scaling up at the end of the day, which is a big part of addressing climate change?
Thanks so much for asking that question. It's a really, really excellent point, and actually fairly region specific. And you might have seen my shoulders sag a little bit when you talk about that transfer, if you like, from innovation to implementation, the delivery of discoveries. This is definitely not easy, and I know the region is very aware of the need for this, but I still think there's big strides need to be made to really facilitate that, to provide a fertile ground to help innovations be delivered. We can talk about the bureaucracy and the governmental regulatory systems. I really do think that we need to ease some of those regulatory systems and bureaucracies back. They really do need to be more streamlined. Even the banking system, and understand the context for some of the complexities and regulations in those systems. So there's always a balance to be struck. But I do think that things like the banking finance system really there could be some changes, regulatory structural changes to facilitate startups and small businesses flourishing more. It's a little bit too directed to a centralized controlling system. As I say, I understand some of the context and the history, but I do think that we need some more change in that direction.
Dr. Mohammed, I just wanted to bring you in on that, of course, to get your opening comments, innovation, the pathway forward, and essentially your overall perspective on the critical question that we're tackling today.
Okay, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure always. Of course, when we talk about innovation nowadays, I guess you can summarize it in one word: Industry 5.0. What's happening in the industry nowadays? It's basically moving at a very, very fast pace, where different sectors need to connect with each other, and they need to collaborate and integrate what each sector has to do with each other. So the nexus basically between, if we talk about water, energy, and food, and everything in terms of applying sustainability, as Mark rightly said about reaching net zero. We have a target. Several countries have made the target by 2040, some by 2050, Saudi Arabia by 2060. So there are lots of areas where we need to focus on, especially if we are going to utilize Industry 5.0. Efficient resource management, and you're talking about sustainable agricultural practices. Underneath that, you're going to find energy efficiency practices for food production and mass food production, and the energy associated with it, and the irrigation and so on. We talk about in that arena as well the circular economy approach. So we cannot neglect that issue. So without integrating, as I said, all of those aspects together, achieving the targets for a circular economy, then we would be able to reach our targets for zero carbon or net zero by 2060 for Saudi Arabia. So it's integration of solutions basically is the key aspect, utilizing Industry 5.0.
And a big part of Industry 5.0, integrating solutions, collaboration. I just wanted a follow-up question on that in terms of what incentives are in place to help accelerate that cross-sector collaboration, as even Silicon Valley calls it now, competitive collaboration. Because at the end of the day, climate change, as you said, touches on every sector, every competitor, every industry. Energy, water, and agriculture is massive. What's in place right now that can help accelerate those partnerships? And then what is your solutions, or what is your advice in order to help create those partnerships?
Well, one thing Mark has touched upon is the bureaucracy and the red tape that basically hinders the progress of that initiative and the interconnection and integration of those aspects together. So I would say that a lot has happened in terms of the development for the government sector and how the PPP module really works, but still we are not at that stage basically to say, yes, we can achieve these goals by 2030, 2040, or 2060, and so on. So there's lots of obstacles yet to be solved and yet to be resolved at that point. Of course, some institutions have launched several incentives from financial perspective. Several banks have, initiated some of the green loans for renewable projects, green projects, and so on. So financing infrastructure development is a key aspect as an incentive. When we talk about the PPP model, we talk about the improved service delivery. So the other aspect with that delivery is the speed of how technology can cope with that, and how can that serve, speed up the process. But again, if all of that from a private perspective is achieved, then without the government support, without the government giving way to all of that development, still that will be an obstacle. So I would say my recommendation or my analysis on that from the market is we need to speed up the process and make the delivery later on by the government to be really faster and streamlined.
Mark, you just want to also add your comments as well?
Just layer one extra comment on top. You talk about incentives, but there's also subsidies. And I find these are highly pernicious. Subsidies are not only market distorting, but they're also anti-innovation. For example, you could bring in technologies or try to bring in technologies. I speak from personal experience on this. To save water, you can go to a farmer and say, I can save you 40% of your water consumption. this is not difficult with some of the technologies. And the farmer goes, why do I don't need to do that. The water's subsidized. It's a low cost because they're not paying the real price. Now, again, maybe, especially in one of the most water-starved regions on the planet, paying the real cost might be going too far, but the subsidies are too distorting and they're actually anti-innovation and really don't work to help people adopt technologies to save water and energy. So I think subsidies to facilitate collaboration, developing Industry 5.0, that's fine, but we also have to remove subsidies that are market distorting and anti-innovation.
I just want to follow up to that comment as well. It's kind of a game as well of balancing people, planet, and profit. And profit is a big aspect, of course, in this industry. Energy, water, food is a massive opportunity. It's a massive sector. Mark, from your aspect, how do we balance that equation? How do we, balance the side of profits while ensuring that we're still making progress towards climate action, where still things may not be innovation at where they should be at the moment, but progressing?
It's a very, very good question and very difficult to answer because, of course, it does come down to a balance. And this does come down often to government policy, and it can be very cultural specific and regional specific as well, regional dependent. We have to balance food safety as well in there. Food nutrition, we do need to be fortifying foods and fortifying water. And this has been done by governments for many decades. You have to balance that against over subsidizing and over interfering with the market. I sound like a bit of a freewheeling marketeer, but really, you do have to take your hat off to the US system and how they've really got a real strong emphasis on education and enabling people to pull themselves up and enabling people to flower and blossom and make their profits, and to try to have an environment where, whilst protecting safety of people and the environment, you're also really giving people the opportunity to innovate and make profits from those innovations. There's no perfect system on the planet, but I do think that looking across the Atlantic is a good model, and I do think we need to be less centralized and more empowering, especially of young people.
Dr. Mohammed, just wanted to bring you in and get your thoughts on that. Yes, across the Atlantic there is progress, but at the same time in the Middle East, Saudi, massive amount of initiatives, NEOM, smart cities,
huge progress.
In Saudi Green 2030, same with the UAE, Qatar, across the entire GCC. How do we intertwine that balance of people, planet, and profit and inject it into the current, I would say, trajectory that we're on right now in the Middle East? What are your thoughts on that, and what is your perspective?
Yeah, definitely. I think, one success story I can say is the Saudi Vision 2030 touched upon all of the, the 3 Ps, people, profit, and planet. And it has demonstrated that through multiple projects, multiple initiatives, such as the Saudi Green Initiative. So it touches upon, how to respect the culture, the environment, and prosperity for the society as well. And through the development of the Saudi Vision 2030 and the National Transformation Plan, several initiatives have been launched, such as, one we're talking about, if we talk about the food industry and the agriculture, the Saudi Agricultural Development Fund, for example, has been remodeled and redefined basically to address those issues. And when we talk about, going forward, reaching the objectives of 2030, and His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed bin Salman has mentioned that in one of the interviews, is what's after 2030? He said 2040. So there's still progress to be made. We are just at the beginning of the development. Several entities, either from the agriculture sector, from the energy sector, from the development, the infrastructure, there are still lots of steps that we need to go for and develop to reach that objective of really reaching the net zero by 2060. So I would say that, all of the collaboration that we talked about, it's key and it's essential. I would say that we will see different initiatives launching by COP28, either for local partnerships, regional partnerships in the GCC or in the Middle East, or international collaborations. So I'm very optimistic to see what happens in COP28 and see how we get forward from that.
These examples, though, they're centrally driven, and that's fine, but I still think we have to really inject a lot more development of a freewheeling innovation environment, driven by the young people, not by the old men making the decisions. I really do think that you do need some of that, again, especially in the context of this region, but it needs to be increasingly balanced, I would argue, with more structures to enable freewheeling innovation.
Well, Dr. Mohammed, a part of that freewheeling innovation, of course, is talent, and Mark, you touched on that perspective as well. Mohammed, you're the head of course, the Saudi Sustainability Network for professionals in the country. Where are we at in terms of developing that talent, developing that pipeline of next generation of leaders? We have a lot of sustainability discussions, whether it's on food, water, or energy, or the Nexus altogether. It does seem that that is a concern for a lot of board members and high-level executives in terms of developing that talent, garnering that talent, and then deploying that talent. What's your perspective on that, and how we push that forward as well to ensure that we're all set to meet the ambitions and the targets that have been laid out in front of us?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's one topic I've been preaching about for almost 16 years now, in terms of developing capacity, capabilities, and talent. And honestly speaking, that's what drives me to establish the SPSA, Sustainability Professional Association for Saudi Arabia, because of the need in the markets. And basically, the objective is to harness the expertise of internationals coming to Saudi, all of the expats coming to deliver their expertise in the Gaga projects and so on, and connect them with the youth, with young people, eager Saudi nationals to learn and to develop their capacity and build their capabilities. And that's something really, increasing in the market. So we are still not at the level I wish to see the Saudi capabilities and capacity at, but we are going there. With different collaborations, either with local entities or international entities. There's a collaboration with the United Nations Next Generation Initiative to establish a connection with what's happening in Saudi and connect them at a diplomatic level with the United Nations development goals. So through the organization, we're not just focusing on, training and spreading awareness and education. No, we are trying to really connect. Yeah, definitely. I think one of the topics, main topics, as I said, teaching as an academic, part professional, is upskilling the industry and the talents, specifically, the young Saudi youth, coping up with what's happening in the world. So I took it as a must-do kind of task for me as a legacy to leave behind, is to really kind of have an input to the market that we can develop the youth, we can develop the industry to reach at the international standards. Of course, the launch of the Sustainable Professional Saudi Association, which I launched back in 2021, was basically because of that need in the market, and to really train the youth, the industry. And it's not just for the youth, of course, lots of senior levels and everybody from local and international associations have joined the membership. But it's not just about being part of an organization as much as it's really having an impact. What can you do to help drive sustainability and drive the innovation in Saudi through the collaboration that the association can have and harness through different collaborations, either from the the scale of the United Nations Development program for the next generation leaders, to local entities, private entities and so on. So there's still much to be done. I'm very optimistic of what still is to come. We still have lots of work to do, lots of collaborations that we need to build to really reach that level where we need to be.
Mark, I just want to bring you in on that, of course, developing talent for the future. I was having conversations with a few CSOs, Chief Sustainability Officers, last week on talent, but specifically aligning industry and academia. You've had experience on both sides of that equation. How do we align industry and academia in order to progress and accelerate the talent needed for sustainability? There's some comments that academia is lagging behind what's needed from the market, especially when it comes to food, water, energy security. How do we close that gap, and what is your perspective on that thought?
Yeah, I guess there's two sides where academia has a contribution. One is for the education of young people. I mean, Mohammed talked about training. I mean, it's both education and training, and we need to have more homegrown talent with homegrown education of young people. We're still importing too much education, if you like. That's good, especially in this transition period, but strengthening the Saudi Arabian universities is extremely important, and it's happening. This is one thing I'm optimistic as well, Mohammed, about Saudi Arabia, and I'm optimistic because of the young people in the kingdom, and seeing younger people in the very senior leadership in the kingdom is extremely good as well. The other contribution, of course, from universities. So I think universities and education, education and training together. I don't think they're so strong on the training side, I have to admit, but I think on the education side, it's getting better, and it's very important and mustn't be undervalued, that importance of education. But the other aspect that universities can contribute is the IP and the innovations. And I think that's again an area where much more needs to be done in the universities. And it's actually a global problem, is getting that transition from the researchers in the universities to the actual delivery, and that's always difficult. So you have these technology readiness levels. I don't know if the people are familiar with this in the audience, but the universities are good at developing stuff, and then companies are good at delivering stuff, and there's a gap in the middle. And I actually think Saudi's not too bad at some of that. I do think they've got the systems in place. Whether they're being adopted sufficiently is another matter. But I think Saudi's got some good, technology development funds, and there's the new RDIA schemes, and those are really quite good. This is brand new. We haven't seen the first granting round yet, but the first call for proposals we're in the middle of it at the moment, and there's a lot of funding schemes which have been introduced, which should help with that transition. So I think, arguably Saudi's better than many other countries for that transition, or it's got a lot of potential in this coming 1 to 2 years.
Dr. Mohammed, just touching on that in terms of R&D and implementation, obviously academia is an engine for that. Where do you see the balance in terms of practical and theoretical, and that alignment with industry? We talked about profit. Industry, of course, sometimes is looking for solutions that they can pull off the shelf, might not understand the grasp the entire aspect of the R&D process. How do you see that gap between industry and academia in deploying R&D solutions from the universities? And of course, the PhDs, master students, they're a big part of that innovation and talent that we're trying to develop as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think the gap is narrowing down, and that's something, with collaborations from different entities. KAUST, for example, is one example of how they are really bridging the gap between those academia and professional. I know the programs they developed there. Several other universities, Prince Sultan University, Princess Noor University, FPAT University, and many institutions are really developing their R&D to grab expertise to come into the university and lecture, or train or do some workshops and some sessions to really give what the industry has to the students before they graduate and so on. And that's something, again, I've been doing for some time. I was teaching at the university for almost 6 years before transitioning to be in profession. So I take that hat or that expertise with me and try to link that when I talk in events or something like that. So it's not difficult. We need to maybe train the educators, the academia, to be able to connect with professionals and vice versa. But institutions and universities are doing what they can and doing their best actually to develop that connection. And there are, as Mark said, there are different grants that help connecting that in the industry, both industries together, and different entities, government entities like the Saudi Council of Engineers, the Saudi Contractors Authority. They're developing their own programs for education and training to bridge that gap, either for undergrads or for new graduates into the market. So there's lots of movement happening there, but there's still lots of ground to cover, as I said. And as an initiative, I've published a new book called The 10 Steps to Become a Sustainability Professional. And it's actually trying to bridge that gap and trying to contribute to that bridge in terms of, laying the bricks ahead of, if you're an architect, if you're an interior designer, if you're an electrical engineer, there are steps that you can take to become, for example, a sustainability professional, even if you didn't graduate yet.
Actually, Estidama is making its contribution too. I mean, it's an Estidama series, and I think they're doing sincere efforts to both develop systems to improve the sustainability of at least controlled environment agriculture in the kingdom, and training people to be able to do things more sustainably or more efficiently.
It is a big step in terms of bringing those together. And of course, when there's massive change, not just happening in the kingdom regionally, but globally towards climate action, to be able to exchange knowledge and deploy climate solutions. I think a big part of that, though, is measurement, understanding the data, being able to monitor, and then, of course, then you know what you have to do to improve and move forward. Mark, I just wanted to get your perspective on that. When we look at something as big as the water, food, energy nexus, where do we start in terms of measuring, and where do we start in terms of moderating accountability, and then of course progressing from there?
Oh man, data. This is where technology can make a huge contribution. Okay, I'm not strongly into self-promotion, but I mean I will mention that one of the first things we did in our own company, we had technologies to save water and to save energy, in that part of that nexus with technologies. And we set up systems that would work in this hot, very hot, dry environment that we find ourselves, because you buy the stuff from the Netherlands, it actually doesn't work because it's too hot, or they give a wrong measurement because they're out of their calibration zone. And so we developed our own systems. We call it Cortex, and it's all linked, with cloud and IoT, and being able to present data so beautifully, and how to analyze, and then to analyze it in a way that's more intelligent than us, using artificial intelligence, machine learning. I think you can start to get a grip on the complex systems. And then, yes, we've got a thing where it's a nanoparticle that you can put into the roof of the greenhouse. It absorbs the heat. It's incredible. And these nanoparticles actually make the plastic blue, because just like the sky is blue from Rayleigh scattering. So we call it second sky. And then that's all fantastic. Good innovation came out of KAUST research. But yeah, what does it really say? So then we have to be monitoring how much energy the fans are using, how much water the evaporative pads are using, and what the savings actually really are. So, but I mean, I don't want to diminish the difficulty of doing this, but really, you know, a relatively small team of coders and electrical engineers, electronics engineers, were able to make some pretty impressive progress pretty quickly in our company to develop this system. So I don't think it's that difficult, and big data is extremely important. Again, Saudi's good with this. There's good computer programmers. These young people are able to, you know, wield things very well in an air-conditioned room with, I think, quite a lot of skill. And so, data, that's what it comes down to, Brian. Data.
Mohammed, I just want to get your thoughts on that as well. One, if we look at the journey of monitoring and, of course, data harvesting, there's some companies that are just starting now and who are on this journey, and of course, there's some companies who are way more advanced in a sense. How do you see that gap closing, especially from this efficiency, sustainability perspective, now that stakeholders are looking at monitoring and harvesting data? And then, of course, two, in terms of the technologies that are out there that you see emerging that can be used and deploying those solutions.
Yeah, I think Mark said it very well in terms of, you know, big data is needed, and really the measurement and the way the measurement is done is crucial and critical here, especially for this kind of environment, as Mark said. You know, lots of companies want to come and invest in Saudi to, you know, measure and deploy their IoT softwares and so on. But if it's not really applicable to the environment, applicable to, you know, what Saudi needs and the KPIs for the Saudi vision and the goals to reach net zero carbon by 2060, then, you know, it's not good to be investing in it. So lots of companies, you know, we've been in contact with them. They are trying to market their products, market their software. But at the end of the day, you know, how is it really collecting that data? How is it really analyzing it? How is it collaborating with different entities and connecting it to different sectors to really deliver the data that is needed to be analyzed? There's still to be done in that arena, but there's progress done through the Saudi digitization. And we saw that specifically during COVID and how Saudi really excelled in that arena as well. So again, as Mark said, you know, the young are really, really keen on developing that. Different institutions here, CAPSARC, for example, King Abdullah Petroleum Studies Research Center is one of the key leaders in that arena. So collecting all of that data is one obstacle. Measuring and analyzing that data is another obstacle. And then disseminating that data and really presenting that to the right key stakeholders with the language they understand is another obstacle. So there's different steps that need to be made to really reach the level that we need to be there.
And
it seems
data curation.
Sorry, go.
Data curation as well. I mean, calibration and curation are two other things as well.
With big data, how do you know what you're curating, though? At the end, it's so much all the time.
Well, intelligent subsampling and calibration. I mean, yeah, you can do it, but you need to be smart to do it, or use smart algorithms, I should say. Yeah.
And of course, having that talent as well in order to progress in that space. 20 minutes goes by pretty quickly, but I just wanted to finish off with a final round of comments. Of course, we have COP28 taking place in the UAE. It's just around the corner. I just wanted to, there's a lot of youth involvement in COP, of course. If we're looking at this massive challenge of tackling water, food, energy, climate change in general, it might look a bit daunting. What is I'll start with you, Mark, your advice in terms of youth who are looking to become sustainability leaders like yourselves, to get involved, how that process works, and the skill sets needed to do so? What do you think is the best way to jump in?
Be positive, be confident. Don't let old men tell you that something's wrong. Get in there and raise just enough money just to get by. Don't overcapitalize, and always look also for the business case in the market. So no market, no business. And then if you've got a market, then can you service that market in a way that makes business sense? All of these things, personally, if they're going to be truly sustainable, they have to also make business sense. They have to make they have to be economically viable, in the long run. And so we do have to. I would encourage people to look at their work, look at it quantitatively, but don't be disheartened and don't be told that it's not a good idea. But do the math, do the sums, and really do work out if there really is both a market and a business case.
Dr. Mohammed, I'll leave it with you for your final comments,
yes.
Of course, touching on
the real businessman.
Definitely your expertise is well appreciated in this arena. And I would say I would maybe conclude with Wilson's law that, without, excel in your education, money will come later. And, training, capacity building, and everything like that, I think that's key and that's essential. And it's, our time, our role to really kind of shine light on that aspect. Yes, of course, without finance, without money, without everything, nobody will thrive. But don't make that as your goal. Try to take the necessary steps to go up the ladder. There's no way up easier than, going step by step. Otherwise, if you jump, you're gonna fall. The higher you jump, the harder you fall. So take it a step by step and be persistent. Don't give up. It's a long journey and it's a hard journey. Believe me, after several years in practice and academia, being one of the first in Saudi to preach about it, nobody knew what sustainability even means back then. So now everybody's using the word and the terminology. So it's not surprising to see people get attention to that idea and so on. So just be part of the movement. And again, as I said, don't think of the money as the first goal in this arena. Money will come as long as you have different objectives: education, learning, helping the society, and so on.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you, Dr. Mohammed. Thank you very much, Mark. We appreciate your time and, of course, the insight shared today. For all those who are listening, please feel free to follow them both on social media for great intelligence and, of course, insights, as well as the organizations. And, of course, us at Gulf Intelligence and Microsoft Arabia, where we'll be publishing this podcast today and content harvested from it. But thank you very much, both of you. We appreciate your time, and we hope to have you on the show again in the future.